Hello and welcome to another episode of Agri Art. Today I'm referencing an article called Women Gardeners and Botanical Artists Part 3 by Brian R. Thompson. This paper covers 4 botanical artists who happen to be female. The first botanical article covers Margaret Stones. Her most famous work was done in 1970 when her artwork called The Endemic Flora of Tasmania was displayed. This is a joint project between her, Brian O'Mulligan, the director of what was then known as the University of Washington, and Robert D. Monroe, the chief of a Special Collections Division of the University Library. The artwork was displayed at an exclusive art show of the Suzzallo Library, consisting of 100 individuals, during which time 40 watercolors from the 2-volume book, The Endemic Flora of Tasmania, would be displayed. The Endemic Flora of Tasmania was a co-authored book written by both Margaret Stones and Winifred Mary Curtis. The art show ultimately fell through, with Miss Stones not coming to Seattle with her artwork. However, she was already well known for her botanical illustration skills in 1950 and 1960, as she already illustrated 3 books by the Scottish plant explorer E.U.M. Cox and his son Peter Cox, and was the primary artist of the then famous Curtis Botanical magazine between the years 1958 and 1981. One of her art pieces can be seen on screen right now. In 1976, however, she did come to the Americas when Louisiana State University commissioned her to illustrate the native flora of Louisiana. The initial illustrations were well received, and the commission was extended through 1990. This resulted in a total of over 200 watercolor paintings of native plants of the Bayou State. In 2018, these images became available, and you could find them at the Louisiana Digital Library. She eventually died in 2018, and left a legacy of being very disciplined in the promotion of botanical artists, and is partially responsible for keeping the practice alive. Margaret Stone was born in 1920 and died in 2018. The next botanical artist is Helen Fowler O'Gorman. She was born in 1904 and died in 1984. She was born in Wisconsin, but graduated from the University of Washington with a bachelor's in fine arts and architecture. She began her career as a sculptor and went to Mexico in the 1940s to continue her studies with the painter Diego Rivera, who shifted her focus into painting, and over the next few decades she developed a passion for the illustration of native and garden plants, specifically in Mexico. This led to the publication of the book Mexican Flowering Trees and Plants in 1961. At the time of their meeting, Mr. Rivera was married to the painter Frida Kahlo, who lived with a mutual friend, the Irish-Mexican architect and painter Joan O'Gorman, who would become Helen's future husband. Together, the O'Gormans designed and built Casa Cova, their home, and designed the landscape of said home. Both the home and landscape partially encompass a natural cave. She was also a polyglot, studying the pre-Hispanic peoples and the numerous plants sacred to the Aztecs, as well as the various rituals conducted by the Aztecs. 2 most prominent species she painted was the Mexican native poinsettia and the Mexican native cosmos, both of which can be seen on screen right now. The 2 most common cosmos grown in Mexico and in the rest of the world includes the garden annual Cosmos bipinnatus and another annual species, Cosmos sulphurensis, the latter of which has historical use as a cure for scorpions in Aztec culture, although I personally would just take antivenom. Hello, I just want to let you know, if you want to fund this channel, you can do so on the platforms seen in the description below. The last 2 botanical artists we'll cover is Audrey Eagle and Emily Carr. Illustrations of both artists can be seen on screen right now. Audrey Eagle was born in New Zealand in 1925, but spent most of her adolescent years in Oxfordshire, England, and within this region she developed a love of plants and began to draw and paint them, and took a course in engineering drafting, which would further amplify her precision in her artwork. She later returned to New Zealand as a botanical artist, and created her book, The Entire Woody Flora of New Zealand, which depicted over 800 subspecies, species, and unnamed plants. This work took 54 years to complete, and during this time her samples were published in smaller books. The final version of this book would be called Eagles Complete Trees and Shrubs of New Zealand, published in 2006. This 2-volume work was then gifted to Miller Library of Seattle, a subsidiary of Christchurch Sister City Association. The initial purpose of drawing these plants was to study their physiology and create a means of jogging her memory of which plants are which. A supplemental document listed all the notes that Miss Eagle noted during her study of the different plants, including Maori names, the topography and ecology of the local habitat, and so on and so forth. The last artist we will discuss is Emily Carr, born in 1871 and died in 1945. She was born and raised in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and lived much of her life in that city. She is best known as a painter, but also an accomplished writer as well. Many of her works in both disciplines regard the Aboriginals of Vancouver Island and other parts of British Columbia. She was also an avid camper. In early 1941, she completed a manuscript about wildflowers expressing her desire to experience the rebirth of spring. The book was titled Wildflowers. This work was not published until many years after her death, however, in 2006 specifically by the Royal British Columbia Museum. After her death, however, both her book and her watercolors of all the plants was published, and the descriptions are quite interesting. This book is not a traditional field guide, but it is considered a fun read. Native dogwood species to Vancouver, specifically Cornus natalie, is described as resembling a badly cooked flapjack. The species Fritinalia affinis is described as a brown tulip, and the mock orange is described as an understudy to true orange blossoms. Many of her descriptions often are described in rhyme or song as well, especially the native flowering currant. Outside of her artwork, she is known for her love of animals. She was an amateur dog breeder, and owned several cats, a parrot, a pet rat, and a monkey, specifically a Japanese macaque. And that really covers about everything. We'll conclude this video with a quick poem regarding the flowering currant, seen in the next slide. Thank you for watching.